Hello, this is Richard Ortiz of Historic Huguenot Street, and I'm here with you today in the LeFevre House. It's a home at the southern end of our site, built in 1799 by Ezekiel Elting. And it was built not only to house his family, as a home for his family, but also as a place for his store and a base for his businesses. Strategically located on the banks of the Wallkill River. It's a grand federal-style brick and stone house. And right now we're doing some work in the dining room to help address some issues or some problems we've had there. And I'd like to show it to you, so if you'll follow me. As we come into the dining room, you can see it's pretty obvious the reasons that we need to do some restoration work here. This room has stood up to the test of time, but also has suffered the wear of time. And it was a wear or something that was accelerated by a leak we had in the room behind here about 2 years ago. And the moisture from that leak really accelerated the peeling of the paint, which is very obvious if we look up. And also the condition of the plaster, it really deteriorated. So those two things, along with the many coats of paint on the woodwork, really led us to have our historic preservation crew in here working. And the goal is for this room to be put back to a more original condition and be presentable at some time this season. So later in the season it will be open for people to come and look at. Over here, if we go this way, we can really see the most distinct feature in this room, the fireplace. Now, of course, this is rougher than it normally would appear. The mantle has been removed. What we can see here that's interesting is we see if I pan from right to left, you see the duke there. It's called a duke. It's a large piece of wood embedded in the masonry, so actually intentionally placed there. Over a firebox like this is not an uncommon placement, but also at strategic points in walls. We would also have dukes like this placed. And the idea is to have a place in a masonry or stone structure where you can anchor the molding and the decorative woodwork that you use as you finish off the interior of a house. So this is what the mantle attached to. And I should mention that before the mantle was removed very recently, the mantle had come partially unattached from the duke, and you could actually stick your hand in behind the mantle. Another condition that led us to restoration. As we move closer here, you can see we've got some blackened areas here, really indicating that this was a much-used fireplace. A fireplace, though, that would have only been used for heat and for the warming of food. This would not have been a fireplace for the preparation of food. This room really was used as a dining room as we know it today. And if we go down here, I'll pan in, you can actually see a bit of the crane there. Crane is a wrought iron implement permanently installed in a fireplace, basically to hang pots and kettles from, and it allowed you to bring them into the heat or move them out of the heat if you were warming something up or heating water for tea, perhaps. That's how it would have been used. Now, if I come back over this way and look up here, let me zoom in so you can see. You'll actually see a tag here on the wall and a small divot out of the paint there. And this was from an earlier chromochronology study that we had done here. We were actually looking to learn more about the original colors of this house so that we could discern what it would have looked like when the Eltings first built the home and lived in it. And we're going to use some of the information from that study when we repaint this room and restore it to more of its Federal era colors. Over here, if I pan this way, and excuse me, and come back, you'll see what normally appears as a built-in cabinet with doors. Right now it's a great before and after illustration. Down here you can see the blue paint that's covered the woodwork here, the most recent layer of paint. And if I zoom in here, you can see what's happening as we strip the paint off. You can actually see the several layers of paint with the bottom layer kind of a translucent gray and white. Over here, I'm going to pan over to this window. This is a south-facing window here at the house, which really does tell the story of its placement, and I'll pan backward here. right on the banks of the Wallkill River. Right where that car is passing now, that van, is where there used to be a ferry crossing. And so as people came into the village from the west, this would be the first home they saw. It would also be the first store that they encountered, because there were several here in the village. So very astute on Ezekiel's part to put his store right here. Coming over here to the left, you'll see the reasons, very obvious reasons for the need to address the plaster here. This is an area that was most significantly compromised when we had those leaks earlier, a couple of years ago. So the plaster will be addressed here. And coming over this way and panning up, right up here, a nice illustration of how homes were plastered. So the bottom layer there is wooden lath. Attached to the framing, thin strips of wood. Over that goes a coarse layer of plaster, which you can actually see that brown layer, and you'll notice the diamond-shaped scoring there. That was done to help the final coat, or the whiter coat, the light coat of plaster, adhere to it. So this will eventually all be covered over with a much smoother finished coat of white plaster and really look much more like it would have back in the early 1800s. Down here, go back a bit. You can see the wainscoting in this room, again being stripped to reveal its detail. And then finally, come over here to the east-facing window in this room. Today this looks out over there to the right on an extension or an addition that was put on this house in later years, but originally this would have looked out on a unique feature, and that is a separate kitchen. So the kitchen was in a separate building built behind this home. Food was carried in and served in this room. And that is a bit of an atypical arrangement for a northern home, much more typical of a home in the south, but it was a model that the Eltings used when they built this home. And so that's a little bit of the dining room here at the LeFevre House at Historic Huguenot Street. I hope you'll visit us later in the season.